I would say that speaking of combination of products, our next speaker, Simone Ravaioli, will speak a combination of artistic residencies together with food and ceramics. I would say that I'm very, very intrigued by this organization of Simone, which is called Postrivaro. I checked its social media and I have to say it left me puzzled because I allow myself to read the description of Postrivaro in Facebook. So it says, Postrivaro is an imaginary animal. Imaginary and occasional, serial but not predictable. I have to say I'm very much intrigued, so I leave the floor to Simone to speak about this very special animal. Simone, please.
So once every while, we are handed a special key. Sometimes this key opens the door to our houses or our hotel room door. Sometimes it is really unlocking inner truth about ourselves or helping us make sense of the chaos out there. I think we would all agree on the fact that experiences are keys as well. Experiences give us unprecedented access and can help transform our perceptions of the world. And certainly this is true when it comes to reshaping a sustainable hospitality sector. What I want to do today with you is share a few keys that really belong to a vision and a project that we ran in Faenza that found its house in Faenza in the last few years. This is the first key that I would like to share. Now, probably the second question that we ask when we meet someone new is, where are you from? Now, this is a very powerful and potentially biased question. In fact, it does help us frame immediately the person we have in front of us. In order to avoid this bias, I think I would suggest it's better to ask a question like, where do you feel at home, for example? If you think about this, most of us may be born somewhere, but have been travel or would answer that question with many places. I feel at home in Faenza, just like I feel at home in Istanbul. I feel at home in San Francisco. And so these are questions that are really helping us unlock what is a very important sense, which is that sense of belonging. And translated into the tourism sector, this can really mean sustainable attractiveness. And that is why this is super important. So it is this sense of belonging that really triggered our imagination when we started to think about this Postrivaro project. And really, the creativity emerged from two apparently separate angles that both have a lot to do with what we're talking about. And these are the ideas of residencies and routes or itineraries. They both express creativity in a way. Certainly in the ceramic world, we are familiar with the concept of an artistic residency, where in Faenza, we would have seen throughout the years, individuals come and stay with us and express their arts in Faenza and leave it there, leaving a trace of their transition. And for the people in Faenza, having someone like that town meant having access to the rest of the world. Essentially, this feeling of traveling without moving by the encounter of a foreign person. On the other end, this idea of moving about, of itineraries, was very, very important in how we framed our own project. And so likewise, when you travel and when you move about, you have this opportunity to appreciate what you left behind. Therefore, this idea of belonging is really fostered and created both by staying in one place, by being curious, or also by traveling and remembering what you really left behind at home. And so it was really this idea of artistic residency that we were very familiar with in Faenza that gave birth to the project known as Postrivaro. In fact, what we did, we were inspired by ceramic world, where an artist would come to Faenza and spend an amount of time here with us and work here. Now, we took that, we pivoted that concept onto the food vertical. And we started to invite, in this case, friends or young chefs with guts, we used to say, to come and express their art in Faenza. We would prepare the environment, set the mood for a creative experience that was very inclusive. And this idea of inclusivity is really one of the driving values behind the sense of belonging, but also the ability to frame our thinking around things that are bigger than us, particularly in the whole world. And so we made it possible for the whole world to come to Faenza for the Postrivolo. In itself, the Postrivolo is this imaginary beast that feeds on human beings. It does feed on their stories, really. And so the project evolved with the number of people that participated into it and the people that were able to come to Faenza and tell a story. What it is, this really is a dining experience. It involves chefs, people that come and pair the drinks, but also, and very importantly, artists. And these artists, would pair up with chefs from all over the world. They were always local, and they would deck out the room, make sure that we set that right creative environment for the chefs and the drink tellers, as we call them, to tell their own story. It's been a very, very powerful experience for us, but also for Faenza. We wanted to really tell the stories of these young talents and in a way find different optics into the food experience while maintaining a lot of respect and recognition and honoring crafts and local products. The Postrivolo created a network, which we eventually called the Gastro Pilgrims. And again, here the idea of a residency, which was a fundamental pillar, and that of a network, of a pilgrimage, of which Faenza, with its creative production, was the mecca for foodies, became too good not to imagine that this would scale to become a network. And it did. And so it did by re-leveraging on the sense of belonging. We were able to host our friends here and gave them the best that our Faenza, that our town could give, and they started to feel like Faenza was their home away from home. And this is the sense that everyone that has been influenced or that has had the opportunity to be at one of the Postrivolo carries with him or her. In fact, this community is really everywhere. It travels. I mean, chefs, if you know anything about the food business, are always on the move. But what we wanted to do is to provide really a fine dining experience by breaking all the rules of fine dining. And those really meant also putting everyone at the same level, giving access to the kitchen, to the guests, and transforming what used to be perceived as an exclusive experience into a fully inclusive one. Over the years, we built an interesting network of these gastro pilgrims in different parts of the world, and although they're far away, we still feel very close to them. And some of them have even come back to Faenza on their own holidays to just continue to go back to where they really had this life-changing experience. I mentioned this sense of belonging. It's key, and in fact, it was also what really put us in touch with Airbnb at some point along our journey. And as Airbnb was studying their experience platform, they realized that food was going to be an important part of it. And somehow we ran into each other, we crossed paths, and we decided they invited us to do a project together. And we found the connecting element here in reflecting on this concept of belonging again, which is very true, very core to Airbnb. Their motto is belong anywhere. And in our way, we found this inspiring sentence, which is an old Turkish proverb that says, your homeland is not where you're born, but where you have a full stomach. And it was our interpretation to that same concept of belonging. And that was the magic, and that's what did it. So what we did effectively is we had an experience that was really divided into different parts. The first one to happen in San Francisco at the Airbnb headquarters. We were invited to essentially create a corner of Faenza inside the Airbnb office. And if you know anything about Airbnb, their offices, is every room in that office is a replica of an existing room that they have for rent on the platform. And so you walk into that office and you are everywhere in the world. And so we just wanted to create our corner in Faenza, and we did. We created a big table, we recreated what was happening in Faenza and provided that experience. Now, phase two was really inviting the Airbnb friends back in Faenza and having them go through the Faenza experience, which is very powerful and persistent, particularly across ceramics and food. And so this was how we together studied the perfect experience. And this is stuff that happened recently around the end of 2016, when Airbnb launched this new experience platform. In phase one, we went to San Francisco and we brought with us all our friends, particularly wine producers. We've relied on the friends at Bartoletti and Cicognani, who did the installation and decking out the room, creating the pergola and so on. We needed to have someone that would tell the story, and so the friends at Cinefood came along, and we asked one of our friends, ceramic artists in Faenza, to create a special edition of plates that we would bring along. These are a few pics from the Airbnb experience in 2016. It was very successful. Here in the middle, you see that table, that one table in the pergola, and the backdrop, it's a little small, but it's a picture of the courtyard in Faenza where we normally host that event. Phase two is really around creating a connection between Faenza and at the time, the Airbnb platform, and set the posterior experience as one of the first food experience there on the platform, but also designing experiences. In fact, we took advantage of them being here in Faenza to help us understand and share with the other people or artists or participants in the hospitality industry what really means to design a great experience. And I'll just leave you with a
The postrivoro is an
video.
imaginary and cannibalistic creature. Postrivoro feeds on the stories of our guests, those who feed our curiosity, those who quench our vices, and those who transform the environment around us. Postrivoro is a way to make people meet around a table to share a unique experience, different every time, which brings them closer by serving on a communal table only one course, the very experience you're living. Postrivoro hatches in Faenza, but at times migrates. Its feed is scattered throughout the world. We are the postrivoro, but you are the postrivoro too, when you come hunting us down to be a part of it. We don't just serve dinner. We are not chefs nor sommeliers. Neither are we artists. We are only curious to find out what connects the people who want to live those 24 hours with us, from dusk till dusk.
All right, that's it. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, everyone, for the invitation. It's been an honor to share what we've been able to do across residency and itineraries here.
Thank you very much, Simone. That was amazing. I really like the idea of creating this special ecosystem of traveling without moving, and at the same time creating home away from home. So in this way, you're involving everyone in this very special world, open for gastro pilgrims. to discover Faenza via food, eating, and sharing. So I believe this is a very interesting concept, and I'm not surprised that the huge tourism giant Airbnb has featured your startup. That's no wonder.